It was just another family dinner, or so I thought. The smells of Mom's famous pot roast filled the air as we gathered around the table, Clayton beside me with his usual charming smile. Little did I know, the evening was about to take an unexpected turn that would shatter my world. The doorbell rang, and Mom went to answer, her face lighting up with a surprised expression. "Felicity?" "Oh, honey, it's so good to see you." My heart sank as my estranged sister stepped into the dining room, her eyes puffy and mascara smudged. She was holding a small suitcase, her knuckles white from gripping it tightly. "Octavia," she croaked, her voice trembling, I need your help." Clayton immediately rose to his feet, ever the gentleman. "Felicity, what's wrong? Please have a seat." As she joined us at the table, the atmosphere shifted, thick with tension and unspoken questions. Felicity took a deep breath, her gaze flickering between Clayton and me. "It's Reed," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "His gambling addiction has spiraled out of control. He's lost everything. Our home, our savings, everything." I felt a twinge of sympathy, but it was quickly overshadowed by the memories of Felicity's past transgressions. The countless times she had lied, manipulated, and betrayed our trust. I couldn't help but wonder if this was just another one of her ploys. I have nowhere else to go," she continued, tears welling in her eyes. "I know I've made mistakes, but I'm begging you, please, let me stay here for a little while, just until I get back on my feet." Clayton immediately jumped to her defense. "Of course you can stay with us, Felicity. Family comes first." I shot him a pointed look, but he met my gaze with a pleading expression, silently urging me to show compassion. Reluctantly, I nodded, the knot in my stomach tightening. As the evening progressed, Felicity seemed to settle in, her tears gradually subsiding. But I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that her arrival was the catalyst for something far more sinister than a simple family reunion. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a twisted web of lies and betrayal that would test the very limits of my resilience and determination. The vows that once bound us were about to be shattered, leaving shards of deceit in their wake. In the days that followed Felicity's arrival, an eerie undercurrent began rippling through our once peaceful home. Clayton, who had always been an open book to me, started acting strange, secretive even. At first, I brushed it off as him simply trying to be a supportive brother-in-law, offering a sympathetic ear to Felicity as she navigated her marital woes. But as the weeks ticked by, his behavior became increasingly erratic. He would disappear for hours at a time, claiming he had work emergencies to tend to. When he'd return, his phone would be buzzing incessantly, and he'd quickly silence it, shooting me a furtive glance. One night, as I lay awake in bed, I heard the muffled sound of his voice coming from the living room. Curiosity got the better of me, and I tiptoed down the hallway, straining to make out the words. "Can't keep doing this," he whispered, his tone laced with tension. "It's too risky." There was a pause, and then a familiar voice, Felicity's, responded, "We've come too far to turn back now. Just a little longer, and we'll be free." My heart pounded in my chest as the implications of their hushed exchange sank in. I stumbled back to our bedroom, my mind racing with a million horrifying possibilities. The next morning, I confronted Clayton over breakfast, my hands trembling as I clutched my coffee mug. "What's going on between you and Felicity?" I demanded, my voice quivering with barely contained emotion. He froze, his eyes widening in surprise. "What are you talking about? Nothing's going on." "Don't lie to me, Clayton." I slammed my mug down, the hot liquid sloshing over the rim. "I heard you two last night. What kind of sick game are you playing?" His expression hardened, and for a moment I saw a glimpse of a man I no longer recognized. Cold, calculating, and utterly devoid of remorse. "You're imagining things, Octavia," he said coolly. "Your sister is going through a tough time, and I'm just trying to be there for her." I wanted to believe him, to cling to the idea that the man I loved was still in there somewhere. But as the days turned into weeks, and his late nights and furtive phone calls continued, the truth became increasingly undeniable. Something was brewing between Clayton and Felicity, a dark, twisted secret that threatened to unravel the very fabric of our lives. And as the undercurrents of deceit grew stronger, I knew I had to act, before it was too late. The first crack in the facade appeared innocuously enough, a forgotten credit card statement tucked between the couch cushions. As I thumbed through the pages, a knot formed in the pit of my stomach. Expensive gifts, lavish hotel stays, intimate dinners for two, charges I knew nothing about. My mind raced, trying to rationalize the unexplained expenses, but deep down, I already knew the truth. Clayton had been lying to me. That night, as he settled into his usual spot on the couch, I steeled myself for the confrontation. "I found something interesting today," I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and hurt. He glanced up, his expression one of casual indifference. "Oh yeah, what's that?" I tossed the crumpled statement onto the coffee table, the damning evidence laid bare. "Care to explain these charges?" For a moment, his mask of composure slipped, panic flickering across his features, but just as quickly it was replaced by an air of nonchalance. "It must have been a mix-up at the bank," he said dismissively. "I'll get it sorted out." "Don't insult my intelligence, Clayton." I could feel the rage building, a simmering fury that had been bubbling beneath the surface for weeks. "You think I don't know what's going on? The late nights, the secret phone calls, and now this?" He opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off, the words spilling out in a torrent of pent-up emotion. "How could you do this to me, to us?" I gestured wildly around the room, the walls that had once felt like a sanctuary now closing in. Was any of it real, or was our entire marriage just one big lie? Clayton rose from the couch, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Octavia, baby, you've got it all wrong. I would never—" "Don't you dare baby me!" I spat, my voice dripping with venom. "I want the truth, Clayton, all of it." He faltered, his bravado faltering in the face of my unwavering resolve. For a moment I saw the flicker of guilt in his eyes, a fleeting glimpse of the man I had once loved, but just as quickly it was gone, replaced by a steely determination that chilled me to the bone. "Fine," he said, his tone flat and devoid of emotion. "You want the truth? The truth is I've been seeing someone else. Felicity and I were in love." The words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the wind from my lungs. I stumbled backwards, my vision blurring with tears of rage and heartbreak. In that moment, everything became crystal clear, the lies, the deception, the utter betrayal. And as the unraveling began, I knew there was no turning back. The gloves were off, and I was going to make them pay for every ounce of pain they had inflicted upon me, no matter what it took. In the aftermath of Clayton's shattering confession, I felt like a woman possessed. The hurt and betrayal coursing through my veins had solidified into a single burning desire: revenge. I knew I couldn't take them on alone, not if I wanted to hit them where it would hurt the most. That's when I turned to my oldest friend, Devin, the only person I could truly trust. "You need to see this," I told him, my voice trembling as I hit play on the hidden camera footage. There they were, my traitorous husband and backstabbing sister, locked in a passionate embrace. Their bodies intertwined, their lips crashing together with a sickening familiarity. Devin's jaw clenched, his eyes blazing with fury. "Those lying bastards," he growled. "We're going to make them pay for this, Octavia. I swear it." And so began our meticulous planning, our every move calculated to bring Clayton and Felicity's world crashing down around them. First, we installed a state-of-the-art security system, complete with hidden cameras and microphones. If they thought they could continue their sordid affair under my roof, they were sorely mistaken. Next, Devin helped me hack into Clayton's bank accounts and credit cards, giving us a front-row seat to their every illicit transaction. With each lavish purchase, each clandestine rendezvous, my rage grew, a simmering inferno that threatened to consume me whole. "You're playing a dangerous game," Devin cautioned one night as we pored over the latest round of financial records. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" I met his gaze, my expression steely with determination. "They made their choices," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "Now it's time for them to face the consequences." And so the trap was set, an intricate web of lies and deception that would ensnare them at every turn. Little did Clayton and Felicity know, their every move was being watched, their every word recorded. They thought they were so clever, so careful in their efforts to conceal their affair. But they had underestimated me, a grave mistake that would prove to be their undoing. As the days ticked by, the evidence mounted, each sordid detail more damning than the last. And with each new revelation, my thirst for vengeance grew stronger. They had taken everything from me: my love, my trust, my sense of self-worth. Now, it was time for me to return the favor. The gathering storm was brewing, and when it finally broke, there would be no shelter from the fury I was about to unleash. With every shred of evidence that piled up, my determination grew stronger. Clayton and Felicity had crossed a line, and there was no going back. Not for them, and certainly not for me. I spent countless nights poring over financial records and legal documents, meticulously constructing a web of traps designed to bleed them dry, emotionally, financially, and psychologically. First, I hired a top-notch divorce lawyer, one with a ruthless reputation for leaving no stone unturned. Together, we crafted an airtight prenuptial agreement that would ensure Clayton wouldn't walk away with a single penny of my hard-earned money. Next, I turned my attention to Felicity. If she thought she could slither her way into my life and steal everything I held dear, she had another thing coming. Through some discreet digging, I uncovered a litany of outstanding debts and unpaid loans in her name, the perfect leverage to ensure her cooperation. "One word from me, and your life becomes a living hell," I warned her one night, thrusting a manila folder filled with damning documents into her trembling hands. Her eyes widened in terror as she flipped through the pages, her complexion turning ashen. "How did you—" "Don't ask questions you don't want the answers to," I snapped, cutting her off. "Just know that if you breathe a word of this to Clayton or try to run, I'll make sure you're buried under a mountain of debt for the rest of your miserable life." Felicity nodded mutely, her shoulders slumping in defeat. She knew better than to cross me. Not after I'd methodically dismantled her world, piece by piece. With my sister cowed into submission, I turned my focus back to Clayton. The man I had once loved with every fiber of my being was now nothing more than a target, a means to an end. Through Devin's expert hacking skills, we uncovered a tangled web of shady business dealings and embezzled funds. It was the smoking gun we needed to bring Clayton's carefully constructed life crashing down around him. As the final pieces fell into place, I could feel the anticipation building, a heady mix of fury and vindication coursing through my veins. They thought they could betray me and walk away unscathed. They thought I would simply roll over and accept their deceit. But they were wrong, oh so very wrong. I was done being the victim. It was time for me to seize control, to wield the power they had so carelessly stripped from me. The point of no return was upon us, and as I gazed at the meticulously crafted trap I had laid, a cold, savage satisfaction settled over me. They were going to pay for their betrayal, with every last shred of dignity, every ounce of pride, every ill-gotten gain, and when the dust finally settled, they would be left with nothing but the bitter taste of their own misdeeds. The stage was set, the players in position. It was time to bring the curtain down on this sordid affair, once and for all. I had planned every detail meticulously, from the guest list to the seating arrangements. A family gathering, ostensibly to celebrate my parents' anniversary, the perfect cover for what was about to unfold. As our loved ones trickled in, I plastered on a smile, playing the part of the gracious hostess to perfection. No one could have guessed the storm that was brewing beneath my calm facade. Clayton and Felicity arrived together, their faces a mask of false cheer. They thought they were so clever, so above reproach. Little did they know, their world was about to come crashing down around them. Once everyone had settled in, I cleared my throat, raising my glass in a mock toast. "To family," I began, my voice ringing out with a steely edge, "the bonds that tie us together for better or worse." Felicity shot me a wary glance, but I pressed on, my grip tightening around the crystal stem. "Speaking of family," I continued, "I think it's time we address the elephant in the room." With a flick of my wrist, I activated the hidden projector, bathing the room in the flickering glow of the damning footage. There they were, my husband and sister, locked in a passionate embrace, their betrayal laid bare for all to see. A collective gasp rippled through the room, followed by a deafening silence. All eyes were trained on Clayton and Felicity, their faces drained of color, their mouths agape in horror. "How could you?" my mother whispered, her voice thick with anguish. "How could you do this to our family?" Clayton sprang to his feet, his eyes wild with panic. "It's not what it looks like, I swear." But the evidence was irrefutable, and we both knew it. I rose from my seat, my hands trembling with a heady mix of rage and vindication. "Spare us your lies, Clayton," I spat, my voice dripping with contempt. "The jig is up." Felicity opened her mouth, no doubt to spew forth another round of excuses and justifications, but I silenced her with a single withering glare. "Don't even think about it," I warned. "You've done enough damage." As the weight of their transgressions settled over the room, a palpable tension hung in the air, a powder keg waiting to ignite. And then, finally, Clayton broke. "Okay, you're right," he choked out, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "Felicity and I, we're in love. We never meant for it to happen. But nothing," I exploded, slamming my fist against the table with a resounding thud. "You betrayed me, Clayton. You betrayed us all." The words tumbled forth in a torrent of anger and heartbreak, each syllable laced with venom. "Did you ever really love me?" I demanded, my voice cracking with emotion. "Or was our entire marriage just one big lie?" Clayton opened his mouth, but no words came out. In that moment, the truth was laid bare. The love we had shared, the life we had built together, it had all been a sham. As the confrontation reached its crescendo, I could feel the eyes of our loved ones boring into us, their expressions a mixture of shock and disgust. But I didn't care. Not anymore. The die had been cast, and there was no turning back. Clayton and Felicity had made their choices, and now it was time for them to face the consequences. The game was over, and I had won, but at what cost? In the aftermath of the devastating confrontation, the world as we knew it crumbled around us. The once unbreakable bonds of family and trust lay in tatters, torn asunder by Clayton and Felicity's selfish actions. My parents, once so proud and devoted to their children, could barely bring themselves to look at the two traitors they had raised. The disappointment and hurt etched onto their faces cut deeper than any knife ever could. As for our extended family and friends, the reactions ranged from stunned silence to outright disgust. Whispers and sidelong glances followed us wherever we went, a constant reminder of the shame we had brought upon ourselves. Through it all, I remained resolute, channeling my anger and heartbreak into a single unwavering purpose, to ensure that Clayton and Felicity paid the ultimate price for their betrayal. With the help of my lawyer, I wasted no time in filing for divorce, citing adultery and emotional distress as grounds for an expedited proceedings. Clayton, finally seeing the writing on the wall, put up minimal resistance, a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. Next, I turned my attention to untangling the financial web they had so carefully woven. Using the evidence Devin had uncovered, I methodically froze all of Clayton's accounts and assets, leaving him scrambling to make ends meet. Felicity, too, found herself drowning in a sea of debt and legal fees, her once charmed life crumbling around her like a house of cards. It was a brutal, merciless assault, but one that was entirely justified in my eyes. They had taken everything from me, my love, my trust, my sense of self-worth. Now it was time for them to experience the same hollowing emptiness I had endured. As the weeks dragged on, the emotional toll began to take its toll. I found myself retreating further and further into a shell, my once vibrant spirit dulled by the weight of my own bitterness. Even Devin, my steadfast ally through it all, began to express concern. "Octavia, this isn't healthy," he cautioned one night over a bottle of wine. "You've won. You've taken everything from them. Isn't it time to let go and move on?" But I couldn't. Not yet. The wounds they had inflicted were still too raw, the betrayal too fresh. So I pressed on, determined to bleed them dry until there was nothing left but the bitter taste of their own misdeeds. It was a ruthless, unforgiving path, but one that I walked with a single-minded focus. They had made their choices, and now they would reap the consequences, no matter how steep the price. Little did I know, the true cost of my vengeance would be far greater than I could ever have imagined. The day I signed the lease on my new apartment, a weight seemed to lift from my shoulders. No longer would I be haunted by the ghosts of betrayal that lingered in every corner of the house I had once called home. As I unpacked my belongings, carefully arranging them in their new surroundings, a sense of renewal washed over me. This was my fresh start, my chance to leave the pain and heartache of the past behind. But even as I embraced this new chapter, the echoes of my revenge still reverberated, casting long shadows over my hard-won freedom. Clayton and Felicity's worlds had been well and truly shattered, just as they had once so callously destroyed mine. Their finances were in ruins, their reputations tarnished beyond repair. Clayton, once a rising star in the cutthroat world of finance, had been unceremoniously fired from his high-powered job, his embezzlement and shady dealings exposed for all to see. Felicity, meanwhile, found herself drowning in a sea of debt and unpaid loans, her once charmed life reduced to a bitter struggle for survival. Theirs was a cautionary tale of hubris and deceit, a stark reminder of the consequences that awaited those who betrayed the sacred bonds of love and trust. As for me, I had emerged from the ashes of their betrayal like a phoenix, my resilience and determination forged in the fires of my own fury. I was a force to be reckoned with, a woman who had stared into the abyss and refused to blink. Yet, even as I basked in the hard-won spoils of my victory, a nagging voice in the back of my mind whispered incessantly, at what cost? The truth was, my quest for vengeance had exacted a heavy toll, one that could never be fully repaid. The once unbreakable bonds of family had been severed, perhaps irreparably. The trust that had once bound us together had been shattered, replaced by a bitter chasm of resentment and recrimination. And still, a part of me clung to the belief that it had all been worth it, that the scales of justice had been balanced, and that Clayton and Felicity had received their just deserts. But as the days turned into weeks, and the initial rush of vindication began to fade, I found myself grappling with a new, unsettling emotion: emptiness. The all-consuming rage that had once fueled my every waking moment had been extinguished, leaving a hollow void in its wake. Without the burning desire for revenge to sustain me, I felt adrift, untethered from the very purpose that had once defined me. It was in those quiet moments, alone with my thoughts, that the weight of my actions truly began to sink in. Had I gone too far? Had I allowed my thirst for retribution to consume me, to the point where I had lost sight of who I truly was? These were the questions that haunted me, a relentless whisper in the back of my mind that refused to be silenced. And yet, as I gazed around my new home, a fragile sense of hope began to take root. This was my chance, my opportunity to start anew, to rebuild the life that had been so cruelly torn away from me. It would be a long and arduous journey, one fraught with heartache and self-reflection, but for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I dared to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, a brighter future lay ahead. The road to redemption was calling, and I knew that I had to answer its siren song, no matter how steep the price.